Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for inviting me. My name is Mick and I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, I'm in Glasgow, which is a city in the west of Scotland, which is a country in northwest Europe. And I appreciate that probably a lot of you on here will not be too familiar with my kind of accent. So I will try and talk slowly. But I will also say that sometimes I get a bit excited, and especially if God shows up, which invariably he does, and that gets me really excited and I get carried away and all the words just sound like one big long sentence and, hey, but I will, bear with me. I'm in Glasgow. I thank you, Glenn, for asking me to come and share here today. My name, I get called Oban Mick because I come from a town called Oban, which is 100 miles north of Glasgow. I was born there, I brought up there, I drank there, I got sober there, and I left there about 20 something years ago. My sobriety date is the 26th of May 1997. I have a sponsor, I sponsor other guys, and I'm in a group and I try and be as active a member of Alcoholics Anonymous as I can. By excuse me, by the grace of God, I have I've been lucky enough to do service in various different forms. Not always when I want to, not always. God's got that kind of sense of humour where he'll say, Mick, we need you to speak somewhere, or Mick, we need you to phone this guy, or give someone a lift, or go into hospital, or whatever. And sometimes I just, my selfishness can take over and I just don't want to go. And I'm like, really? What now? What do you mean the guy needs help? That very ungrateful sort of attitude that can be all far too prevalent in my mind. And that, that's, I don't think that'll ever completely disappear. But when I go, if that happens when I go, I know the reason God sent me. And I know the reason that I was asked to go and be of service. And I feel a different person when I come out the other side. The daily reflection today was about paradoxes. And I was on a meeting at lunchtime. And lunchtime for me, right, because it's 5 o'clock at night where I am now. I don't know with you guys, right? But so when you were getting out of bed, I was in a meeting and they read the daily reflection, and it made me think, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you had said to me that things like acceptance, surrender, giving away, being of service, all those things were going to relieve me on a daily basis of my illness and make me feel better about me and the world round about me, I would have said that you are absolutely bonkers, that you are lying, you're deluded. Okay, but that is exactly what happened. Because I came here, listen, so briefly, I drink. First time I got drunk, I was in a country called Spain, which is not like Scotland because it's very warm and it's got sunshine and beaches and all that nice stuff. And I was at a flamenco evening, and there was all these dancers. I was 13 years old. I took a drink and I had 2 drinks, and it was stuff called sangria, which, well, you guys know what sangria is, right? So it's what the Spaniards, like, they get all the leftovers and they put it in a pot, and then they put fruit in it to make it look nice, and then they stir it up and they give it to daft Scottish people like me. And I drank it and I got drunk. And when I had 2, I remember thinking, I'm not going to have any more. Now I'm 13 years old, right? I know nothing about drinking. But the next thing I remember, it's the next day, I've caused trouble in the hotel. I've embarrassed my family. I've had a blackout. That didn't change. That was my drinking. I could never stop when I started. And whenever I did stop, I couldn't stay stopped. I always felt as though there was something missing. Everybody was better than me. It didn't matter if I won the race. Somebody else should have won it because I wasn't as good as I should have been, and I didn't deserve anything, and I wasn't like everybody else. When I grew up in a small scheme, like a housing scheme, and we would run about in a gang. Right? It wasn't we weren't gangsters, right? I wasn't carrying a gun and selling drugs or anything like that. But we weren't angels either, right? And when we were all going home at night after doing whatever we'd been doing, I always wanted to go to somebody else's house. I didn't want to go back to my house because my house had an atmosphere. You see, I grew up in an alcoholic home where nobody drank. And if you say that outside the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, people think you're mad. How can it be an alcoholic home if nobody's drinking? Well, my experience is that home was full of fear, excuse me, was full of dishonesty, was full of selfishness, and there was always this atmosphere. I was an only child, so hey, no wonder I was lonely, right? I've got an isolating illness and I'm an only child. Wow, man. It's funny, I spoke to a priest some years ago about stuff, and he said to me, he said, when your parents died, you were an orphan. I never thought of that. I thought, when you think of an orphan, you think of a wee boy, don't you? In a big, lonely building, sort of singing to himself, going, da, 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 da. That wasn't me. I was a crazy kind of guy that done crazy stuff and thought he was the centre of attention and thought he was very funny and all that stuff. So this growing up in this household where my father was old, right? So if he was still alive, he would be 90, 98, right? But he died when I was 16 and he was always having heart attacks. So what would happen is I would come in from school, my dad would be sitting in the chair, he would be this funny grey sort of colour. And he thought that a cigarette would help, right? But hey, he was of that generation, I'll be all right in a minute. Just a heart attack, I'll be done. And one day, one of those heart attacks worked and he was dead. And my mum was an alcoholic and so was my dad. I never saw my dad drink. He got sober before I was born. My mother, she left. My mother and father split up a couple of times. And so there was this, I was frightened of everything, just everything. Like frightened of having pals, frightened of not having pals, frightened of having money, frightened of having no money, frightened of getting up in the morning, frightened of not, I hated school. Like I just, school and me just didn't get on. I didn't really like the other kids. I certainly didn't like the teachers. They were all barking mad. And I just didn't fit, man. It was like, wow, get me out of here. But you know what's crazy? You know what's really quite a odd thing is, I didn't feel as though I fitted in, but I tried so hard to fit in because I wanted to. I want you to like me. I want you to think I'm funny. I want you to think I'm good looking and I'm clever and that I've got whatever. I'm 5'6". And I'm bald. Well, I wasn't bald when I drank, but I'm 5'6". When I drink, I'm 6'3" or bigger, and I'm dead tough, and I'm really funny, and I'm Billy Connolly, and I'm Mel Gibson, or whatever you want to, Scottish thing you want to do, right? And I can sing. Oh, geez, wait, get the microphone. Here we go, right? All that stuff, and I will drink with anyone. I will drink with anybody in this room or anywhere else. If you're going to get me drunk, and you can provide what I want, I will like you. Absolutely. I will laugh at your jokes. I will agree with your politics. If you're a guy, I'll tell you you're cool and you're tough and you're funny. If you're a girl, I'll tell you you're beautiful and you're just dead, you're everything. So that you will get me drunk because you are my access to what I want. And if you're that gatekeeper, I'm going to like you. Irrespective of what you really are. I don't care. Because my illness tells me I need you to like me. I need your approval, or I need to control you. If I can't control you or have your approval, if I don't have one of those two things, I'm disturbed. Because I don't know what to do with people that have no feelings for me. I've no idea. And it scares me. And so I will do things that are out of character in order to get you to like me. Now, if you're new, hey, if you've just arrived, please don't judge Alcoholics Anonymous on this guy, right? Oops, sorry, that's God, tell me, talk about something important. Please don't. There are many, many meetings. There are many, many speakers. There are many, many different types of meeting. You know, but I would absolutely, I would beg you to keep an open mind and to get a faith as quickly as you can in what is in these rooms and the power of what has been given. Because what was given to me when I arrived at Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea what you guys had. Absolutely none. My mother was in this fellowship. She was 13 years sober, and then she got drunk, and then she came back, and then she died sober. She died when I was 20. So I was 20 years old. I've got no mum, no dad, no brothers, no sisters, nothing. There's just Mick and drink, and I like drink. I don't have any problem being drunk. When I'm drunk, I have no sense of consequence. I have no sense of responsibility, and the world is very, very easy. Drinking's my solution. I don't have a problem drinking. I can drink for Scotland. If drinking was an Olympic sport, I'd have lots of medals because I was really good at it, and I can do it for a long time, and I can put it away, and I can all that. No trouble. None was. I'm drunk before I even get the, you know, before I do this, right? I'm drunk. I'm steaming. Scotland has got loads of words for being drunk. We've got more words for being drunk than anything else because a lot of people do it. There's a kind of culture here of that. Anyway, that's not really the point. When I've got money in my pocket and I am going to a bar and I know I'm going to get drunk, I am as high as a kite. I am skipping down the street. I am whistling Dixie. I'm all these happy things. I'm yee-haw, way. And don't get in my way. You get in my way, it won't end well because I am not going to stop because I'm going drinking and you're not stopping me. I didn't know when I was doing that I suffered from a mental obsession. I didn't know that I was selfish and self-centered. I knew I was dishonest because I lied. You knew I was lying because my lips were moving. So that was all, you know, that was easy. And did I know I was frightened? Yeah. I mean, the big book talks about 100 forms of fear. And you know, they talk about the four horsemen: terror, fear. What is it? Terror, fear, bewilderment, and despair. Is that right? Something like that. I didn't have 4. I had about 100, and they were charging through my wee flat that I lived in because the fear that drinking and the fear that alcoholism brought into my life, the like of which I would not wish upon my worst enemy. Lying on the floor, not knowing which way to turn, trying to cool down, trying to stop my heart from racing, thinking I'm going to die, wondering what I've done and where I've been, who's going to knock my door. Nobody's going to phone because the phone doesn't work anyway. What have I been? Who have I spoken to? Who did I not speak to? All that stuff going through my head constantly at 1,000 miles an hour. And all I want to do is get another drink. Nothing else. I'm just going to drink. Because that's the only thing that takes away these feelings. Nothing else that I know. Am I going to turn my will and my life over to my higher power at that moment in life? Not a chance. At that moment in my life, alcohol's my higher power. It controls everything I do. It controls how I think. It controls how I operate as a human being, if I can operate as a human being. There is nothing that's going to make me in that frame of mind because I don't know. I'm not informed. I don't have any facts about Mick. And so eventually, after a series of years of this behaviour and this madness that I've found myself in, I come to a place where I know I can't. I got married, by the way. Some I don't know how that. I met, me and this girl went to church and got married. The only thing we had in common was we both got married on the same day. But apart, anyway, she's now my ex-wife, but that's another story altogether. But I got married, I had a son, and I'm hanging on to life by the skin of my teeth. But now it's getting dark because now I want to die. I don't want to live anymore. I just think, what's the point? All you do is drink. All you do is cause trouble, cause pain, People don't really like me anyway. People just say they like me. People just, in my head, I think that people say, Mick, I would really like you to get well. I don't believe them. I think you only want me to get well because there's something you want me to do for you. You don't really care about me. You don't, I could die tomorrow and nobody will miss me. What's the point? And all the while, the alcoholism's got a hold of me and it's shaking me and it's saying, got you, Mick, got you. Now you're really in trouble because now I'm completely isolated. Lo and behold, on the 26th of May 1997, there was, I was sitting on a pier and I was wanting to die, and I phoned this number which got me through to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I met a man called Donald, and Donald knew me better than I knew me, and he 12-stepped me and he took me to my first meeting. So you have to remember, Oban is a very small town. There's only 8,000 people live there. Everybody knows everybody else. So at my first meeting, I knew everyone. I drank with some of them. I owed some of them money. Some of them I thought were dead. Some of them I didn't want to see. So it was, really quite a confusing situation. And I was young. I was 26. So right? So nowadays, somebody 26 coming into AA is quite common. It's great, right? I love it. But 24 years ago, it was kind of unusual, and especially in a small town. So right away, I feel very different. I'm not old enough to be there. I don't remember World War II. I don't remember the Beatles being #1 in the charts. I don't remember man landing on the moon, right? I don't remember any of these things because I wasn't here. But these guys do, and they're expecting me to identify with them. How am I going to identify with these guys that have done national service? I didn't do these things. National service, do you guys get that when they send you into the army for a couple of years? Anyway, don't do it here anymore. But then they started talking about how they couldn't stop thinking about drink and how they manipulated everybody's lives round about them so that they could go and get drunk. And I identified. They talked about how when they took a drink, nothing was going to stop them from having another drink. And they talked about how they thought when they got drunk that the next time it would be okay. They wouldn't drink in the same place. They wouldn't borrow money. They wouldn't hang around with the bad guys. They would drink in different bars. They would whatever. And I identified. And it didn't matter that they led different lifestyles to me, that they had more money than me, that whatever was going on, I identified with their alcoholism. They talked about how they didn't think that people wanted anything good for them in life. They felt useless. They felt despair. They felt frightened. I had all these things and more. And I identified with what these men and women were talking about. And a man took me aside and he said, Mick, he told me, stopping drinking was one thing. Getting sober was something quite different. And I had to find what sobriety really looked like. And I had to find how Mick showed up in sobriety. And I had to first of all find a power greater than me. And that was not going to happen. Because you see, I'd been brought up in a particular religion. And the God that I thought I understood was a God of fear and a God of punishment and a God of anger. All the things I didn't want in my life. There was a man called Frank who became my first sponsor, and Frank saved my life. And he took me into, he lived across the road from me, and he took me and he said, the first thing you need to do, son, is get this God into your life that you don't have. And you're going to have to understand that God wants you to have a good time in the world. And he wants you to be happy, and he wants you to be at peace, and he wants you to laugh, and he wants you to feel as though you have a reason to get up in the morning, because none of these things existed in my life. And I didn't believe him. And he said, well, you're going to have to try. And he said, you're going to have to start off by handing your will. And I didn't know anything about handing wills over and handing my life over. Are you joking? Nobody, I don't know about you guys, right? But the bars that I drank in, nobody talks about handing their will over. Right, handing money over, but not handing their will over. Nobody talks in the bar about spiritual maladies. Nobody talks about being an outright mental defective. Although I wish I knew that line when I was drinking, because it's quite a good one. And I did drink with a few. So I get into this way of living, and I think, What is this? What is it that I do? What does a day look like? So you get up in the morning, right? You wake up. What happens? Like what? Is God sitting by your bed? Morning, God. By the way, He is. Well, mine is, right? Because He's here just now. God, this is the meeting. Meeting, this is God. Do you know the good thing about God? What's really, really cool about Him, right? See if you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're really, really, your head's doing a number on you. You don't need to wait till He wakes up to phone Him. He's awake. You don't need to phone and wait on hold. Do you know that thing? Thank you for phoning God. For resentments, press 1. For burning desires to drink, press 2. For all other calls, please hold and an angel will attend to you as soon as they're ready. You don't need to do that because He's sitting waiting on you. And He was there all the time. He's been in my life since I was born. The problem was me. Shocker, Rooney. Imagine that. Imagine Mick being a problem. It's me that's got the issue. I'm not inviting him in. I'm not opening the door and saying, God, come on into my life. Come and have a laugh today. What would you like me to do? What would you like me to do today that might help someone else? What an incredible thing. That reading in the daily reflections, it tells us that by going and helping somebody else, I feel better. How does that work? Because when I arrived here, I want all you lovely people, wherever you are, Tennessee, New York, Berry, I don't know. Somebody might be in Scotland, who knows? I want you to give me something that's going to make me feel better because my selfishness is absolutely rampant in my mind. And it's all I can think about is me and how I'm going to get better. And you tell me that by going and helping somebody else, I'll feel the benefit. That makes no sense. None. But my experience has been that is exactly what happens. My God, who would have thought? So I turn up here and Frank says, you're going to have to try handing your will and your life over. Just say a wee prayer that says, never mind, see all these prayers that you had, when you were in school and all that you don't believe anymore. Just try talking to Him. So I do. I talk to God all day, every day. And it goes something like this. Big man, what's happening? What is it you want me to do now? Really? I've got to do what? I've got to go to work. Okay, right, let's go to work. Big man, I'm tired and I want to go to sleep. But okay, right. I just have these conversations that maybe sound one way. And somebody asked me one time, they said, but Mick, when you're doing that, who's listening? I'm listening. I'm listening to what I'm supposed to do. See, I don't know about any of you guys, but I've got this thing called a conscience. And when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, it rips me to shreds. It tears my inside. It pulls me apart and it makes me feel disconnected. And when I'm disconnected, I'll begin to isolate. And when I isolate, my illness has got a hold of me and I am of no good to me, to anyone else, or to God. And that's not what I'm supposed to do. That's not what I was asked to do. That's not what was suggested. What was suggested to me was that I clean house and I go and help others. And so in order to do that, I've got to go through a process. And when I arrive at the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, unbeknown to me, my head is full of selfishness, it's full of resentment, anger, jealousy, bigotry, you name it, prejudice. All these things are all over my head and I'm in complete denial of it because I want you to think I'm a nice guy. I want you to think I'm all right. I want you to think I'm funny. There ain't much funny left about me when I come here. And I go through this process in step 4 where I have to start writing things out. I don't want to do that. No, I'm not writing anything out. What's the point of that? But I did it anyway. Because Frank had a wonderful way of suggesting things. He kind of suggested things like, I think you should do step 4, son. No, I don't want to do step 4, Frank. Didn't ask you what you thought, son. Those kind of conversations, it's like, not really interested in what you think. That's half your problem. That thing, you've heard that line, right? What's the the 3 most dangerous words to say to your sponsor, I was thinking, right? So it's, it never ends well, does it? So I didn't really think that much because I didn't know what to think. And I just done it anyway. And I started to discover that I had, listen, here's something else, right? Whether it's a mistake or whether it's a part, I don't know. Either way, it's how I show up in a given situation, in a relationship between me and somebody else or something else that makes me disturbed. And being disturbed leads me to getting drunk, because getting drunk is what relieves it. Dr. Saltworth, God rest his soul, what a man that was. I'd love to have met the man. God, what a good conversations you could have had with him. Anyway, he talks about the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once, like that. Doesn't come a week and Tuesday, comes right now by taking a few drinks. Drinks that we see others taking with impunity. In other words, it doesn't matter. They just take a few drinks. My son drinks. He's in the other room. He's a big guy, right? It's not like me. He's tall and all that stuff. He drinks and he comes home. How'd you do that? That's not my experience. I drink and disappear. And I turn up at your home and you don't like me because I'm very annoying when I'm drunk, because I'm quite loud. And I do things like sing songs and play the drums, and that's not good when you're drunk. Anyway, but then I become a pest. You know, I'm funny for 5 minutes. And people go, oh, you're a good guy, you're a good laugher. After 5 minutes, 5 minutes later, when I've tried to steal money out your wallet, or I've said something inappropriate to your wife or whatever I've done, because I'm not a nice guy, right, when I'm drunk. So my head goes for a walk. Then you're throwing me out of your house. And I come here and I start writing these things out, and I'm actually talking to people about how I feel, about how I don't like different people in the world, about what my relationship's really like with other people, why I'm jealous of them, why I wish I wasn't the guy that I am, what I'm frightened of, what it is that makes me tick, what it is that annoys me. Why does my neighbour who cuts his grass on a Sunday, why does that annoy me? Why? He's a man cutting his grass. Why? Because he's a normal man doing the things he's supposed to do, and I'm not capable of it. Dead easy. I'm jealous. That guy, there's something wrong with him. He's been in the same job for 5 years. That's a normal thing for people to do. But I don't like the guy. Why? Because I can't stay in a job for 5 years. Because within that time, you will find out who I really am. And then you'll sack me. So my fear stops me from staying there. These were the things that I started to dig out. My childhood. Why did I still have resentments towards people that I grew up with? I don't even see anymore. People that are insignificant in my life, but are still in my head. Because they had something that I wanted, that I couldn't have, that I thought I was supposed to have. All these things are driven by my self-will and have nothing to do with God. Nothing. Because God wants me to be the guy that he put on the earth to do whatever he's got me to do. My ideas just land me in trouble. My ideas of what life's supposed to be, and my ideas of how I'm supposed to behave, what I'm supposed to say on this meeting today, I don't know. I asked God, when I sat down here, I said, God, let me say what you want me to say. Put my ego to one side. And do you know, something else that I quite enjoy nowadays is, so I think sometimes we get, I can get very protective about what I say, because I want to say things that, first of all, I want to impress you with my knowledge and my sobriety and all that rubbish, right? That's no good to anyone. No good if it's coming from a place of ego. Yeah, if I've got experience and knowledge, of course it can help you, but it has to come from the right place. It has to be from a place of compassion and understanding, and with absolutely no attachment to ego and to pride. It has to be from a place of helpfulness and kindness and understanding. And it has to be relevant to what you want me to talk about. I'm not good me sitting here. I could talk about a lot of things. It's no good. What about if I told you about the mistakes I had made? What about if I told you about the pain that I've been in? What if I told you that, yeah, 24 years in Alcoholics Anonymous sounds wonderful and whatever. But what if I told you that some of those years were absolute hell on earth? Would I have stayed had I known the pain that was coming? Nah, probably not. Probably not. But am I glad I stayed? Absolutely. There is no other way for me to live, because the pain that was coming anyway. And if I hadn't been here, I wouldn't have known how to handle it. I wouldn't have lived. God knows what would have happened. Literally, God knows. Has it all been singing and dancing and, parties and la-di-da? No. You see, I was in here for about 9 years, and all the stuff that I learned and all the way of living, and I made amends in step 9. In step 8, I made my list. 6 and 7, I offered myself up to God, and I said, you need to take me all good and bad, my shortcomings, the things that I'm not doing that I'm supposed to, help me identify them and help me find a way to do these things. In step 10, I did, excuse me, I used the spot check and I done all these things, and yeah, I prayed. In step 12, I carried the message. Absolutely. I was a member of a group. I done all these wonderful things that you asked me to do, and I felt the benefit. And then I got to a period in my sobriety where I thought, I know, I've got a better idea. I don't really need to go to meetings. I don't really need to sponsor that guy. I don't really need to tell them the truth. I don't, life got bad. Trust me. I lost my wife, my kids, my job, my house, everything. I didn't drink. You see, I've got this thing called pride, and I wasn't going to drink because I now think I'm a somebody in here. I'm suffering from spiritual pride, if that exists. I don't know what else to call it. I'm suffering from untreated alcoholism. And yeah, you could meet me in Glen, or somebody might say, hey, Mick, how would you like to speak at my meeting? I'd say, yeah, great, let's go. And my life is in the toilet. And I'm full of fear, and I'm people pleasing, and I'm living in my pal's couch. Is that really what God intended for me? Is that what the big book promises is? No, of course it's not. And it wasn't until about 7 years later when I finally found the courage to do what I was supposed to do. And I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to leave the relationship I was in. I didn't want to move house. I didn't want to go and make amends. I didn't want to go through the process again. But it was exactly what I had to do. And the right thing is not always easy, but it's always right. And more often than not, doing the right thing is not what I want to do. But I did. And I got in my car and I drove to Oban and I saw Frank. And Frank said, well, I won't say exactly what he said because he swore, right? But he said, where have you been? And I said, I've been kind of lost. And he said, right, okay. And we sat down and we began again. And I started to find myself. And I started to find this new guy. And I started to get this courage that I never knew I had. And I started to find a usefulness in my life. And I started to feel as though I could help somebody. And I joined a group. And I started sponsoring guys again. And I started doing a bit of sharing and whatever else and a bit of service. I started getting into hospitals and treatment centres and talking to guys whose lives were in the toilet and saying to them, it's okay. You can come and get it out of the toilet. You can come and do what we do. And it's all wonderful and have a life again. And I started to feel as though there was a reason for me to get up in the morning. And that's important. Because without that, my day doesn't even begin. I just wanted to end. And I started to feel as though I had this new purpose. And I joined a new group. And I went through a process of step 4 and 5 again. And I uncovered all these things about Mick that I hadn't realised the first time around. And I beg you, if you're in here and you're new, if you've only been in here a wee while, please don't do it the way I done it. Don't. See if you have found what's working and you've found your God and you're living happy. And yeah, there's bumps in the road and things get tough and all that stuff, right? But if you're happy and you have purpose and you know your life's going in the direction it's meant to, please just stay on it. Don't get it into your head like I did that your way is going to be better or easier, because that's not my experience. And I caused pain and heartache and hurt and anger to people around me worse than I did when I was drunk. That's not the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is not what the big book promises us. And it was my experience. And I can sit here and tell you wholeheartedly that my experience of turning that around and doing what God wants me to do and what the big book asks me to do and what the program suggests I do has been beyond anything I could ever have dreamt of. And it's been a life, and it's been a life. I sound as though I'm dead. It is a life today that I get up every day with a sense of purpose and a sense of well-being and knowing where I'm going and what I'm doing. Zoom came along. We're all sitting on it now. Alcoholics Anonymous changed. I'd been to meetings all over. I've been to I went to the International in Toronto in 2005. What a blast that was. Myself and two of my pals. Well, there was a bunch of us from Scotland, and we all got on the plane and went to Canada. And I sat in the plane and I said, don't know if I want to go to this. 80,000 alcoholics in a big stadium. That was incredible. If you've, some of you have maybe been, if you've not been and you get a chance, God, you've got to go, man. If 80,000 people saying the Serenity Prayer doesn't make you feel alive, then there's something wrong. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh man, listen to that. And just like God sitting beside you. God, grant me the Serenity. It was incredible. I've done all that stuff. And then Zoom, I can remember sitting where I am now. I'd been to a meeting in Glasgow, and the lockdown was all happening and everywhere was closing. And people were worried. People were really scared. There was people crying. It was painful. And I came home that night and I sat here, and my pal Jordy was there. Dear, Jordy died last year. Anyway, my pal was with me, and he said, somebody has just sent me a message with this thing on my phone. It's a thing called Zoom, and there's a number that you put in, and apparently it takes you to a meeting. Now, I remember the first online meetings. That was a chat room where you typed words up in the corner. It took you half an hour to say, my name's Mick and I'm an alcoholic. It was terrible, right? But, that was all there was. The next thing I know, I'm on this, and I know everybody. Well, there's John, and there's Wally, and there's Jimmy, and there's Karen, and there's Sheena, and this is really cool. And the next thing I know, I'm in New York, and then I'm in LA, and then I was in, somewhere in France. I have no idea. I was up all night. It was like 4 a.m. I've got work the next day, and I thought, I'm not going to work. I'm going to stay and do this. This is amazing. I was in a meeting in the Bronx. I was in a meeting in Compton, and I was like, this is Compton. I've heard songs about Compton. It was nuts. And I'm seeing people that I've listened to on tapes. I was like, there's that speaker. I've heard him. That's what he looks like. It was just mind-blowing. And then, you get over that sort of period where some people didn't like it. Some people thought it was, I don't know what they thought. I heard some people saying, this is not AA. Well, I don't know what you think. If it's not AA, I'm not really sure what it is then, because it certainly looks like AA to me. But anyway, it's definitely not a football match. Do you know what I mean? So this is all going on, and I'm seeing all these people. I ended up doing service on a meeting in New York, and nobody understood me, but hey, who cares? It was all, what's this guy? Hey, we got this guy called Oban Mick. He's Scots or something, I don't know. And everybody sounded like Sylvester Stallone. And then I met all these guys in Nashville, and God, no talking like this. And it was just incredible. I spoke on a meeting where we had a translator for Russian dudes and stuff. It was incredible. And we're still sitting here. But, and it's a big but, and it's really important. There are all these people now who got sober on Zoom. How incredible is that? Started sponsoring guys that don't live near me. They live miles away. Hey, Mick, I'll sponsor if you want. Aye, do you want Zoom? Right, let's do it. Have you got a big book? Aye, let's go. Started going to meetings with all these guys. I'm sitting here just now and there's, Richard's here and there's all folk. And we started getting all this. And what happened was, in my experience, all we talked about was recovery. All we talked about was a solution. All we talked about was the big book, getting better, finding God, getting all these experiences. This is not the way it was. This is not the way it was, not for me here. For me here, I listened to drunkalogs for 40 minutes. You know that, right? You go to a meeting. And it's two men, right? Two men sitting at the top table and they're a certain age. They've done a lot of time in jail. They've got, they've that many, their head's like a roadmap of Europe with all the scars, right? They're talking about fighting, jails, weapons, drugs, right? Aye, that's right. Aye, and I've done this, and then I've done that. Then I met this guy, and I've known a drink since. Thanks. That's the message. Wow, man. Now, for some people it works, but it didn't work for me because I'm not that guy. I've not done all that stuff. I've done bad things, but not like that. Now I'm hearing people, all sorts of shapes and sizes and whatever you are. I don't care what you are or where you come from. I have no opinion whatsoever. I couldn't care less. I love you all. And I'm hearing people talk about a solution. And I'm hearing people talk about finding God. And I'm hearing people talk about helping other people. And I'm hearing people not just talking about it, but they're actually going and doing it. And they're reaching out to people in all corners of the world. And they're saying, listen, do you understand what this place is? And something happened. There was a man speaking one night. And he's a well-known speaker. I won't say who he is because he wouldn't like me to, right? But he said this thing that changed me. The guy that you see sitting here today is not the same guy that appeared on Zoom 2 years ago, right? He said, we assume the newcomer knows what to ask. That might not sound very profound. And it might not sound whatever. But it hit me like a bag of rocks. Because I thought of all the people that I had met and I assumed that they knew what to ask about this place. I've never done that since. And I never will. I pray to God. Because all these guys that come here have no idea what this place is. It sounds confusing. God, steps, praying, amends, sponsors. What's it all about? The first thing that I will do with a new guy is ask him, excuse me, do you really know what this place is? Is there anything, regardless of how silly it may feel, that you want to ask? Because if so, please ask. And it's not important that I sponsor you, but it is important that somebody does. It doesn't need to be me. And there's guys in here that have a long time sobriety. They've not had a drink for a lot of years. They couldn't tell you the big book from Big Bird. And these guys are important too. Let's go. Have you got a big book? Yeah, okay. Come on, tell you what we'll do. Open it. And then we'll get really adventurous and we'll read it. Way. And you take 2 alcoholics and put the big book in the middle and let God do the rest and see the outcome beyond anything that I've experienced in my life. Now that sounds as though it was the first time I'd ever done it. It wasn't. I've done it lots of times. For whatever reason, when Zoom came along and the influence of a lot of other people and the sharing that I heard and the experiences that I gathered, it changed everything for me. And taking guys on a screen, just looking like this, and taking them through their 4th and 5th step, watching the lights coming on in their eyes, hearing them on the phone and say, hey Mick, my wife spoke to me today like a normal human being. I spoke to my wife like a normal human being. I offered my wife a lift to the shops today, Mick. Things that they wouldn't normally do. there is no greater reward. Yeah, there's big dramatic things that happen also. But just hearing those small steps in people's lives and having the privilege of being the guy that gets to have a front row seat to a show that you can't buy tickets for, that there is nothing else like it. And for somebody just to come back, for another man to think that I'm good enough, that they want to tell me and have the confidence to tell me things that they can't share with anyone else. It's a privilege that I sometimes wonder if I'm worthy of it. It'll never stop me from doing it. I'll never stop reaching out to guys that need help. I will never stop a day at a time. Hey, we can never say never. But I'll never want to be the guy who chooses to ignore the new guy, the guy that's completely burst, the guy that's upside down, that doesn't know whether he's in AA or Planet Krypton, the guy that wonders what it's all about. Will anyone ever talk to him again? It's easy to talk to the guys that have got a lot of time and the guys that have got a lot of experience. They're great to talk to. I love it. You know, it's like starstruck sometimes. You talk to some guys and you ask them things and they're open and willing. But the guy that comes into your group or comes onto your Zoom meeting and he's got just dark eyes and he doesn't know how to say. 3 hardest words for me to say when I came in here was, I don't know. I couldn't say it. My pride wouldn't let me. And the easiest 2 words for me to say was, I'm fine. I'm okay. It's all good. And the reality was, I didn't know. And I wasn't fine. But my pride wouldn't let me. And to have that ability, to stick my hand up in a meeting and say, guys, I'm in trouble. I need a bit of help here. Doesn't matter that I've been in here for 24 years. Doesn't matter. 24, 34, 104, it won't matter. You don't need to take a drink to be ill in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's been my experience. I've been a very sick man in here, but I've also been a very happy man. And I've also been a very privileged man. And I've also had a lot of things happen to me. I've met people and I've had experiences and talking to people and learned so much about what this is really about. Cheers, Glenn. An hour and 5 minutes left. Wow, thanks very much. I've had the experience of being able to go and visit people in other meetings and to carry a message into jails, into hospitals, into institutions and whatever else. But I've taken this into my own life. I was told to practice these principles in all my affairs. So I've been able to be helpful to my colleagues at work, to my friends that are outside the fellowship. You know, there's all sorts of, we can apply this to everything. We do apply this to every walk of life. And I can take this to when I meet my friends that are not alcoholic and they'll ask me about God. Imagine asking me about God. Who would have thought that I would have anything to do with God that's worth giving away? But that's exactly what's happened. Some of my friends that they don't want to admit it because they're a bit prideful or whatever. And then they get in the car and say, hey, Mick, you believe in God, eh? Aye. How do you do that? Now, the guy's not an alcoholic. The guy's not got a drug problem. He just wants a bit of peace in life. And he maybe sees something that might be able to help him. And I'm able to offer it. And I'm not embarrassed. I'm not ashamed. People know I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah, anonymity is important for my pride and ego. But if somebody needs a hand, they need to know that I might just have something I can give to them. They need to know my employers know I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. For what? The reason they know? In case somebody else in my employers needs Alcoholics Anonymous. It's pretty simple stuff, really. I've had the benefit of being able to make amends to people. I'll finish this can of Coke here. I made amends to my parents by writing a letter to them because they were both dead by the time I got sober. And that letter took me quite a long time to write. Not because, excuse me, not because it was very long, but because I wanted to be sure of what I was saying to them. And that was a long time ago. Last summer, I done it again. Last summer, I was 24 years sober, and I'm still writing to my parents because things came into my mind that I knew I had to get off my chest, and I knew I had to give it to them. And I wrote it out, and it was quite short, and I took it to their grave, and I read it, and I burnt it at their grave, and it disappeared. And there is no bad feeling. So if you're sitting there and you're worried about these things, there is a solution, and I promise you it works. When I left my mother and father's grave, I walked round the corner, and less than 20 feet from where they are buried, there is a man buried there who was a man that my mother had an affair with, and I had a dreadful, dreadful resentment towards. I was given the ability to kneel down at his grave and to tell him it was okay, and to tell him there was no ill feeling, that he was sick too, and to rest in peace. And I have no resentment, and I wish no ill on him. And I hope and pray that he's resting in heaven with God tonight with my mum and dad, and they're all at peace. I only got that by coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I only came here to stop drinking. I got way more than I bargained for when I turned up here, and I'm a very, very satisfied customer of Alcoholics Anonymous. Glenn, thanks again for asking me. I'm glad to be here and sober. God bless.